Hello, everyone, and welcome to our B9 Creations webinar. My name is William Vertrees. I'm a marketing associate here at B9 Creations, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Ethan Hartman. So, Ethan, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Hartman. I'm on the Sales and Solutions Engineering team here at B9 Creations. I have a background in mechanical engineering and systems engineering. I've spent the last 5 years in the 3D printing industry, the last 4 of which have been present-specific here at B9 Creations.
All right, let's get into the company a little bit about B9 Creations before we get into the reason you guys are all here for the micro 3D printing. So B9 Creations has a differentiated approach to solving problems with additive manufacturing and has developed a base of raving fans in high-value industries such as medical, aerospace, and high-precision manufacturing. Through our track record of exceeding the most demanding customer requirements, we have been positioned to enable customers to progress from prototyping all the way up to fully scaled production, leveraging through additive manufacturing. And through these accomplishments, we've actually been able to put our name to a lot of the awards that you guys can see at the bottom of your screens. So without further ado, let's get into some of the applications that we are currently using our 3D printers for. So we are in a plethora of industries, blue chip industries from medical and aerospace, where we help them develop the casings and the components that go into the medical devices, as well as some medical research. In aerospace, we're helping them develop new components that are lighter and faster and operate better for those applications, because of course in aerospace you're always looking to get lighter, faster, stronger out of those materials. We are also in industrial and consumer tech, where we are helping them develop the cases that their products get put into, different components within any of their devices. And this is also an area that micro 3D printing is going to be especially applicable in the future as these electronic devices get smaller and smaller. We are in research and materials, where people are using our printers to research new materials and properties for those materials to help develop new ways of manufacturing in industry, as well as working with things like biomaterials and medical research as well. Jewelry manufacturing is one of our larger industries, where we are able to help smaller businesses or larger businesses help scale their production, as well as offer new products that they would have been unable to manufacture before through their traditional means. And then we also offer the B9X Solutions program, where we work with our partners to develop solutions to their manufacturing needs through 3D printing. We help them develop new devices if necessary. We help them set up their production runs and basically help them design the solutions that they need in order to produce the parts that they need to produce. B9 Creations, even though we are located in Rapid City, South Dakota, we are technically a global company with our machines in 70 countries across the globe, as well as many different global partners who are helping us get our machines out to the masses as well. So what are the main advantages of micro 3D printing? Well, of course, besides printing extremely small parts, through micro 3D printing, you can actually get very, very complex shapes and features with a very good level of resolution and accuracy, especially compared to other manufacturing means in the microsphere, such as micro injection molding or micro machining. It doesn't require that expensive and time-consuming specialized equipment to get your parts. So instead of having to send out for a part to get it either injection molded or micro machined, you can actually do it in-house now through a micro 3D printer, which will drive the cost down significantly, especially if you're dealing with multiple iterations of a part. It's very feasible for low to mid production runs. So if you have a micro 3D printer and you're only printing a few hundred or even a few thousand parts, you can easily do that with a micro 3D printer at a very, very low material cost compared to your alternatives with micro injection molding or micro machining. And once you get up into those higher ranges is when you might want to look into something like injection molding for those higher runs or larger volume production runs, because those will obviously require a lot more iterations, a lot more pieces and parts that you're going to be putting out there. And it also allows for quicker design iterations, where you're able to easily take the part. If it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you can then go back to the drawing board, go back to your CAD file, easily change the design around, and have a new part on your table within a couple hours. All right, let's also talk about some of the applications. I mentioned a few before, especially with microelectronics. As these devices are getting smaller and smaller, they're going to have a higher demand for smaller scale parts in their devices. It's technically also used for chip production already, but as things advance, it's going to be used more and more in the actual devices. It's used in microfluidics, where you can 3D print a microchip that has very, very fine channels in it. You then push liquids through to test viscosity and other elements of that liquid going through a very, very small space. It's used in tissue engineering, where they're able to 3D print the chips and splints that they can then develop different cell structures and tissues in them. So it gives them a perfect base to go off of in their research, because they can precisely print all of the parts that they need to get the best results for their engineering. It's used in microscale optics to develop the parts that go into the devices that are used. And other companies are actually able to 3D print the lenses that they use in those machines as well, to just see if they can push the boundaries of how small they can push light through small lenses. And then microrobotics as well, kind of in the same vein as microelectronics. As devices get smaller and smaller, they're going to need smaller and smaller components. Microrobotics is going to be a huge field for this, especially when it comes to R&D and manufacturing, because you're going to need those parts smaller and smaller. And if something breaks or you need a new component, you can easily 3D print that and then go back to the drawing board for whatever you're going to be developing. So we already talked a little bit about some of the benefits of micro 3D printing, but I'm going to go into a little bit more generalized explanation of some of the reasons you might want to use a micro 3D printer. So of course, the first application is going to be your design freedom. Having a micro 3D printer in-house is going to allow you to run through as many design iterations as you want, as long as you've got the resin to meet it. If any element of a design isn't up to your standards or specs, you can easily take it back to the CAD software, make a change, and then have it back on your desk in a couple hours after re-3D printing it. So it's going to give you a lot more freedom of design versus sending it out, having to wait for it to come back, and then causing that design process to take weeks or even months, depending on the part you're requesting. You're also going to get a lot more cost benefits from that same process. Outsourcing those parts can be very, very expensive, especially for micro injection molding or micro machining. So having a 3D printer in-house, especially one as low cost as the Elite Micro, would help cut overall cost, especially as far as materials, because you're going to be using far less material in developing those micro parts, because you're going to be using very, very little resin for each of those parts, versus sending it out to do something that's removable manufacturing, like machining, where they're going to have to run it through a lot of different materials just to get you the final end use part. You're going to have a lot more versatility as well with having a 3D printer in-house, not just for what parts you want to design or designing whatever parts you want. You can also use it with one of our current resins. You're able to develop micro injection molds of your own. So that's already part of your production process. Having that machine in-house could help speed up that process. Or if a mold you currently are using breaks, has a defect that you didn't realize before, you can easily reprint it and get right back on your feet when it comes to production. And then also you're going to have material benefits through micro 3D printing. We currently offer 3 materials through our platform that are good for a variety of use cases. We can also work with you in a number of ways to develop your own materials with our printer. So you can either we can either come in and help you develop your own material with our 3D printer settings, or you can use our Captivate software to go and develop settings for your own materials with our 3D printer on your own. Those are 2 options that you have available to you that can expand the horizons of what materials you can use. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Ethan now to talk a little bit more about our B9 Elite Micro.
Thank you, Will. So yeah, we're just going to kind of run through high level what the printer specs are before diving into some of the applications and use cases, materials, stuff like that. So Elite Micro is a DLP-based system that improves upon our current lineup of 4 series machines by improving our resolution and ability to manufacture micro and small scale parts. So our print dimensions there, so you can see are 38.4 by 21.6 millimeters in your XY platform. It retains the same 127 millimeter, or about 5 inches Z height. One of the things that separates the Elite Micro from our, say, our 530 or our 550 is our 385 nanometer light engine. So the other two machines run a 405 nanometer light engine, but this 385 allows us to hold a little bit tighter tolerances, especially when it comes to our clear materials. You will see the print speeds are dropped a little bit compared to what are advertised for our 530 and 550 platforms. And that's because this machine is specifically tuned via material settings and hardware for printing microscale parts. Whereas the 530 or 550 is a more general use machine that you can make small parts on. You'll see way higher success rates printing those same small parts or even smaller parts on the Elite Micro. Our effective resolution with our fast technology is sub 20 microns of the 20 micron native pixel size. So we have documentation and photos holding parts within about a thou of CAD. Machine dimensions overall, it's the same height as our core series machines. It's desktop or workbench ready. There's no large setup times. You don't need us to set it up for you. 15 minutes out of the box in printing, just like our core series machines. Pass it back to Will for the next. Go through some case studies.
All right, thank you, Ethan. All right, so let's go through some of the case studies for people that have already been using our machines to develop the parts that they need. So one of my personal favorites is two of the largest medical device companies came to us with various parts, but one of them came to us with this part that you guys can see on your screen now. That is actually an infant catheter head that they came to us needing development for. We were able to take that part and in 48 hours, send it back to them with the exact design specifications that they requested. As you guys can see, that has very, very small channels, little teeny holes, small posts attached to it that were very, very hard, and none of the competition was able to print easily. We were able to get that back to them exactly the way that they wanted it. So these medical device companies are coming to us needing these smaller iterated parts, and they are very, very happy with the results that they're getting from our B9 Creations line of printers, because some of these parts were even done on our older machines. And so that kind of is what inspired us to get into the microspace for 3D printing in the first place. So we were also able to do this at basically a quarter of the cost compared to some of our competition, which helps us fill a good little niche space in the field. As this quote from one of our partners says, "There are so many parts that I see a machine like this finally making possible to create that otherwise might have been out of reach for many due to systems costs. Not every part needs a 10 by 10 micron machine that costs well over $100,000 and is by no means the fastest horse in the stable." So our B9 Elite Micro runs around $30,000, and compared to other machines, which can be $100,000 or $200,000 for a very large machine that only fills a very, very small niche, this machine is perfect for if you are running milli to micro scale parts in mid to low production volumes, and you just need those iterations out as fast as possible to have that part that you need to manufacture with. So our medical partners are using our machines to develop these parts for prototyping, for implantable devices, and all of their other med device needs. We also have a study in microelectronics where they are able to take our machine and use it to develop parts for their microelectronics, kind of like I mentioned earlier. So they love having that machine in-house because they're looking to onboard as much of the production process as they can into their systems. So having this machine at their disposal speeds up their production process and gives them great value for what they're able to do. Again, because they won't have to be sending out those parts to another manufacturer to then send back the design and do that back and forth process. They can easily develop these parts on their own in-house and have them on production much, much faster than they would otherwise. So if you guys are still interested in learning more about some of the applications, some of the use cases for micro 3D printing, we have a comprehensive white paper that we just released about a week or so ago. To access this, you can go to www.b9c.com/B9 Elite Micro Guide. And so you'll get access to this white paper, which includes a lot of the stuff we've gone over today, but also some other features and topics surrounding micro 3D printing. So if you guys are interested, please go and pick that up. It is free for all. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Ethan to talk about some of the materials that we have available on our Elite Micro platform.
Thank you again, Will. So yeah, we're just going to run through some of the materials, design considerations, and post-processing procedures that we've experience using the Elite Micro and sort of like tips and tricks, that sort of stuff. So for the 3 of our materials currently available on the Elite Micro, we have a robust ABS PC, HD Clear, and HD Slate. Robust ABS PC is the toughest material currently available on the Elite Micro. We've had people use ABS PC for short run, low pressure injection molding due to its heat resistance, toughness, as well as incredibly smooth surface finish. So you won't see any layer lines inside your mold that end up on your final part. It's a nice shiny black color and ends up looking very nice for end-use parts with those surface finish, very nice surface finish as well for casings, internal features, proof of concept prototypes, all that. We also have our HD Clear material that is exclusive to our Elite Micro and our other 385 nanometer machine. Like I said, because they print at the 385 nanometer light engines. It's very accurate in our XY directions with a little bit less in the Z just because it is clear. It's also the stiffest material currently available on the Elite Micro, making it the easiest to work with. HD Clear has been kind of my go-to material whenever we get customer parts. They send us a part saying, hey, let's print this, see what it looks like. On the Elite Micro, we'll generally start with clear just to see if it's even prints, see what the feature sizes are, something we want to pursue before we can explore other material options to see what the customers like. HD Slate is our highest detail material currently available in the Elite Micro, whereas the robust ABS PC and HD Clear have 20 micron slice thicknesses. The HD Slate has 10 micron slice thicknesses. So that allows for incredibly tight tolerances within your Z direction, but maybe a little bit less so in the XY because of the chemical makeup to make sure it prints nice at the 10 micron layers. There's the crisp, it's the highest detail material with shows the most crisp features overall, as well as it's a nice kind of flat gray color. So small details are easy to see or pop through if you have like logos or textures or anything on the surface of your parts. Move on to the next slide. We can go on to some of the design considerations. Now these were benchmarked using the in-house torture test or benchmarking test to see what the limits of these materials currently are with kind of our general use material settings. We'll go through those as well as what the kind of failure criteria was for each of these measurements. So for the self-supporting overhangs, this is an angle measurement here. So as it's the angle between a flat surface and the printed surface. And the kind of failure criteria was when there was individual layer delamination. So as these layers print, the steeper your angle is, the larger the overhang of an individual layer is going to be. And at some point, that distance becomes so great that the individual layers won't adhere to the next ones. You get sort of kind of a feathering effect along those bottom surfaces. The HD Clear being the stiffest material is one of the nicest to print and totally outperformed what we were expecting for most materials on this Elite Micro platform. The vertical wall thickness is when there's freestanding walls. There's freestanding walls, various thicknesses of all the same height. Now, each of these will, or the failure criteria for these was when the wall either didn't print at all due to it being such a small feature that it just didn't print, or when the wall started flaking off during the printing process. You pull it off, you'd see the wall kind of formed, it was breaking. These horizontal channels are oriented along kind of the XY plane, will stack up in the Z height. The failure criteria for these was when light was not being able, or put them under a microscope with a backlight and there was no light shown through them. Vertical channel diameters is going to be the same or similar to the horizontal channels, except these are oriented up in the Z direction. So the layer height doesn't play as much of a role in maintaining these diameters. Same with failure criteria. Put against a blacklight or a backlight under a USB microscope, you can see which show light through. The blind holes are similar to the vertical channels, except they have bottom to them. And these failure criteria for these was when a pin of a certain diameter was not able to be fully inserted into the required depth into these holes. Kind of move on to the post-processing on the next slide here. So the post-processing is going to be very similar to most resin 3D printers, with a few other considerations due to the incredibly small feature sizes of some of these parts. Now, I'll kind of walk through what process we've been developing internally. So we'll generally take the parts on the build tables. This build table here, so they're a little bit smaller than our current ones. Run them through a B9 clean unit to remove a bulk of the leftover resin on the build table and part. Once you do that, make sure it's clean. Once all of the excess resin is off, we'll actually move it to the small ultrasonic cleaner to clean out some more of those internal channels and find feature sizes. And we don't actually put isopropyl in a ultrasonic cleaner, as that's very dangerous. It vaporizes the isopropyl very fast. We follow the process outlined in the NASA white paper, where you have essentially a barrier between the ultrasonic and then a sealed container with the isopropyl. So you have your ultrasonic filled with water and then a sealed container full of isopropyl where you contain your part. For removing your support material, we tend to use incredibly small tools such as dental picks, small tweezers, and post-processing sometimes does need to be done under those USB microscopes, just so you can actually see where supports end and parts begin. If you do have internal channels as well, we'd recommend small syringes to kind of flush through those internal channels. Kind of what we'll do, for microfluidic parts or small chips such as these. Let's see this on the camera. So we'll actually flush the part with isopropyl alcohol before putting it in the ultrasonic cleaner. This allows the ultrasonic that's within the part to experience those ultrasonic waves and clean out a lot of those internal features, especially if there's like right angle corners and there's no fillets and any of those features as well. And then for curing, we generally use our Cure XL unit, which seems counterintuitive because it's an Elite Micro. Why do you use our large clean unit or curing unit? It's because our large curing unit actually has high intensity 385 and 405 nanometer LEDs in there, whereas our other cure units only have a 405. The 385 is required for proper curing of HD clear parts, as well as found cures ABS-PC, HD slate, and other materials a little bit better as well. It allows the light to penetrate a little bit further into the part, allowing for a more even cure. A kind of a side effect of using the XL cure unit is that it allows the entire build table plus parts to be stuck into the curing unit, which kind of helps solve some of the issues we've seen, using the Elite Micro anyway, where you have an entire build table full of clear parts that are the size of a grain of rice. You tend to lose them pretty fast, especially if you take them out of the printer, clean them once, and take them off the build table. As soon as you put something that small, that's clear in an ISO bath, it looks almost invisible. So there's kind of two ways we're getting around that. This mesh here, we have a small mesh T-ball spoon. So they're kind of one of those spring-loaded kind of clamps that have a sieve on the outside. So you put your parts in there for all of your cleaning, compressed air, post-processing procedures. And what I tend to do is just leave the parts on the build table for as long as possible. The plastic knob on the back of the build table here is totally removable. And you take that out and that won't, interfere with any of the ISO. You won't damage the build table at all. You just keep your parts on the build table, supports and all, through most of the cleaning and compressed air processes, and then remove them, or curing as well, and then just removing them after your post-cure is done.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Pass back to Will.
Yeah, let's move on to our B9 Elite Micro workflow. So how can you work this machine into your existing manufacturing workflow or work it in general? So to begin with, we have, of course, our B9 Create software, as well as our B9 Captivate software, which are both available. The Captivate software is going to allow you that access to develop your own materials on our platform. So you can go in, play around with the settings, and get that material to do almost exactly what you want it to do. Of course, with a micro platform, you're going to run into a few more issues than you would with a regular one, but you can work around that. Or we also have the option of you taking your material to us, and then we develop the settings for you on the platform, if it's possible. So you would, of course, start with our B9 Create software, go in, upload your CAD file, slice it, and then you're going to send it over to our B9 Elite series. It'll go through the standard printing process. You'll let it print. Again, it's part of our ecosystem, so it has the same easy-to-use interface You won't have to develop any settings as long as you're using our base materials. So that's going to be our HD slate, the ABS, and then as well as the HD clear. Then once your parts have finished printing, you're going to go through, just like Ethan detailed, our cleaning and curing process. So with the Clean XL, you're going to be able to wash those parts very easily using a lot less ISO than a lot of other wash units use. Then you're going to take that out. If there's still some residual on those parts, you're going to want to wash that off, maybe using, like Ethan mentioned, the ultrasonic cleaner or even water at the end of it. And then you're going to take those parts and then put them into the cure unit, which again, that Cure XL has the added benefit of having the 385 nanometer light waves, which is going to allow you to cure that HD clear resin that you will probably be using with our machines. So that's basically the whole workflow for the B9 Elite Micro series. It's very, very similar to the rest of our platform. So if you are familiar with our machines or already have machines within your workflow, it's going to fit in effortlessly and be just as easy to use as all of our other printers currently are. So let's say you guys want to get access to these microscale parts, but you guys aren't quite ready to make that decision to buy a full machine. We actually have our Service Bureau offer for micro parts. So through that operation, you would basically come to us with a Service Bureau request for a part. We would take a look at that part, and then we would get in contact with you to make sure that that part is feasible. We want to make sure that we know exactly what you're looking for in the part, what material benefits you're trying to get out of that part, the timeline for developing that part, and we are going to work with you in person or over the phone with a real person every step of the way, so that you get the exact part that you want out of us when you send us that request. So we will give you a quote for the part, whether it be one part or a few parts. We will go over the feasibility to make sure that we can actually print that part, because we don't want to give you a part that we technically can't manufacture. Then we'll go through the approval, make sure that it meets all of our standards. We'll run the parts for you, either small scale, one part, few parts, and we will have that back to you as quickly as possible. So that is our Service Bureau offerings currently. So if you guys are looking to test some of our microscale parts, see if what you want to be printed can be printed on our platform, then I would suggest the Service Bureau to start before you actually make the decision to buy the printer. And then if those parts come out exactly how you want, then we are more than willing to sit down and talk about actually purchasing that printer for you guys if it works out for your needs. So with that, I think we are going to jump into some questions now. So I will be setting the questions up, and I will be sending them over to Ethan for answers. But before the Q&A, can you ask, please put any of your personal questions into the Q&A box, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible with the time that we have remaining. So on to the first question for you, Ethan. With a native pixel size of 20 nanometers, does that mean that I can print 20 nanometer feature sizes? Or what does that mean for the end part that you're getting based on the pixel size?
Well, I hope it's 20 micrometers and not nanometers. No worries. Correct. So with the 20 micron native pixel size, it doesn't mean you can exactly print like a perfect 20 micron feature. And there's kind of twofold reasons. For one, the smaller you get your parts, the more it's going to end up being kind of sort of pixelated on that, the screen that is the projector within the DLP system. So if you try to hold a 20 micron diameter pin and you have a 20 micron square pixel, you're not going to end up with a round pin. So because of that, or in the second part of the answer too, we're kind of running into the limits of our materials. So you'll notice here that the materials we are offering are materials that are available on the rest of our platforms as well. So we're kind of adapting what we have currently available. We benchmarked all of our materials on this platform, and these three are the ones that sort of popped out best. And part of that too, you have these materials within a 20 micron by 20 micron by say 10 micron tall voxel or 3D pixel. You might not have all of the chemical components needed for a complete polymerization. So that's something we've definitely looking into, is for kind of micro focus materials, or if you guys have if any of the viewers have a micro material in mind, we could probably get it benchmarked on our B9, see if that's something that works out for you.
Awesome. All right, so on to our next question. So this one's a little bit of a long one. The thinner you make parts, you will see a greater increased flexibility of thin features, just like you kind of just mentioned. Think of glass plate versus glass fiber optic filament. When your standard materials are printed very thin, the flexibility of these micro-printed parts can be more flexible than expected. This might push you to develop resins specific to the micro platform that can produce more functional rigid parts of thin features. Are there any plans of seeing micro-specific materials in the near future?
Yeah, so that's definitely something we're looking at currently is micro focused materials, especially sort of seen a lot of interest in the micro molding space. ABS-PC tends to work for a short run, um, low pressure injection molding. Now we're kind of developing an offer around higher heat deflection temperatures there, and more kind of generalized tooling resins. Like I said, that kind of goes into the whole question of a micro-specific material and the development time and cost behind doing some of that. So like I said, if there is a material you guys have in mind, have access to, then feel free to reach out and we can basically get that qualified on a B9 Elite Micro.
Awesome. All right, next question. I am trying to print encapsulated channels for microfluidics. What is the feature size for this using your clear and your best printer setup?
So yeah, the best that we've been able to achieve has been a 250 micron rectangular channels within a part. So that's actually, what this part I showed earlier was right here. So those are 250, and there's a couple 300 micron channels for that serial dilution ladder. This was then filled with our bio red material and then cured afterwards.
Awesome. All right, next question. Can you polish the HD clear or is it optically clear?
So HD clear is not optically clear, but we have heard from many people that receive parts that it is one of the best clear materials you can get on a resin printing platform. But that doesn't mean you can't say prototype lenses because it is polishable. We've had a couple different more traditional polishing, with your different levels of grit and polishing compounds, as well as we've seen a lot of use of people just painting clear nail polish over it, sort of fills all the micro voids in it that there's a very smooth, uniform, clear outside finish.
Awesome. Okay. Is it currently available with any third-party materials?
Current state, we don't have material settings on the machine for third-party materials, but like I said, that's something that's totally available through kind of two different routes. So you can either do our B9 Captivate route where you would purchase our materials development software and turn all the knobs and buttons yourself. Okay. Or if you have a very specific material in mind, you get in touch with our materials team, myself and the materials team, and we can develop those material settings for you.
Perfect. All right. So I know I mentioned earlier that it's definitely being used in the medical sphere. So along with that comes some issues with biocompatibility. So one of our questions now is, do we have biocompatible materials or medical certifications for the Elite Micro currently?
Current state, we do not. But we do have other materials that are ISO 10993, 5 and 10 compliant. And so we could go through the process of getting the Elite Micro materials qualified for that, as well as actually qualifying the Elite Micro machine itself for use in the medical sphere.
Awesome. So kind of going back to another thing, can you make micro molds with the Elite Micro?
Yes, so you can print using the ABS-PC material, molds that are good for short run, low pressure injection molding. I've had experience with people shooting, like say, Delrin plastics, and kind of those lower temperature materials with it. Like I said, we are currently developing an offer around a higher temperature material to shoot more your nylons or polycarbonates, that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Are there any more questions from the audience? Give it another minute. All right. If there's no more questions, we will continue on. So next steps for if you guys are interested in purchasing the Elite Micro, of course, you can reach out and talk to one of our sales reps about adding the Elite Micro to your current workflow, especially with the fast technology. You can also, if you guys are going to be in the Chicago area, we will be at Rapid TCT, and we will be showing off the Elite Micro, as well as our existing platforms, as well as what is coming in the future for B9 Creations and our 3D printers. So if you want to find out more, of course, you can call and request a sample, like I mentioned, through our service bureau. You can get more product information from our sales reps and see if our micro 3D printer is going to meet your needs. You can schedule a product demo, and you can also talk to our solutions experts, again, to see. So when you guys are ready to take the next step, our contact info is on the bottom. Email at info@b9c.com. Our number is on the bottom, and b9c.com is our main website if you want to see the web page and what our other printers have to offer. So with that, I think we will bid you adieu. This has been great, and you guys have a great day.